Today on Stamp TV, I'm going to show you a masculine style card that uses the whitewash wood grain technique and a few other tips and tricks. Let me show you the tools and products you're going to need to make this card. First, you're going to need some ink, and I'm using the Gina K Designs Craft ink, some of the charcoal brown ink, and some of our white pigment ink. Then you're going to need some cardstock, and for cardstock, I'm using our white cardstock, our black onyx, and some of our turquoise sea. And then I also have a white card base. You're also going to need some stamps, and the stamps that I'm using are from the Ship to Shore stamp set from the new Here Comes the Sun Stamp TV kit. I'm using the boat, and I'm using one that says, "Let God steer your ship." I have a couple of extra little things here that I'm going to use. I have one of our buttons and buckles. This is the heart buckle. And then from the nautical wood pieces, I have the ship's wheel. You're also going to need tape and some scissors, a craft pick, and some of the brads that come in the new kit. And then I've added a little bit of twine because I want to show you a fun technique using twine. And most of you have twine or baker's twine or something a little bit thinner in your collection, and I want to show you a fun way to add that to your card. Then I have some 1/4-inch pop dots and some of our mini glue dots, and then I also have my score buddy. So to begin, I'm going to start with this piece of turquoise sea cardstock. And I want to use some of the craft ink first because I want to tone down this bright turquoise color. So I'm going to start with some craft, and I'm going to just lightly rub that over the cardstock a little bit as if I was doing the wood grain technique. That just makes it look a little bit aged. Next, I'm going to use the score buddy, and I'm going to score lines 1/4 of an inch apart all the way across. So I'm going to start right down here at this first one, and I'm going to pull my card a little bit away from the top here so that I can really get my scoring tool into that groove. So I'm going to start here and do 1, and then 3, 2 3/4, 2 1/2, 2 1/4, 2. Then I'm going to turn it to make it a little bit easier for me. And so the next one again would be 2, 2 1/4, 2 1/2, 2 3/4, 3, 3 1/4, and 3 1/2. So now I have all those score lines, and if you want to make sure that you didn't miss any, just turn it over and it's a lot easier to see all the lines going across. Okay, so now that we have that part done, I'm going to grab this piece of paper again, and I'm going to grab the white pigment ink. Now this is going to create a whitewash look over this kind of aged looking turquoise color. But by scoring first, it's going to make sure that the whitewash really only hits the planks of wood or the boards and not in between. So I'm just going to rub this down like this. And the same thing on the other side, like that. And don't worry if it's not perfectly even, because that's how it would look if it was aged. And you can take a small piece of paper towel and you can kind of wipe some of that away so that it dries a little bit more quickly. And it also kind of helps to remove some of the brightness of that white and makes it look a little bit more aged. Isn't that pretty? And then this piece is going to go onto a piece of black onyx cardstock. And I'll just put that on right now using a little bit of my mono dot adhesive. All right, so there we go. Let's make sure that's even. That doesn't look quite so even from this perspective. So let me hold it up and do it. There we go. Okay. And so now I'm going to let that sit and dry for a couple minutes. It doesn't really take very long for it to dry, but by doing that first, it'll give it plenty of time to dry so that my top pieces will stick on top. All right, now my next step is to take this piece of white cardstock, and I'm going to grab this boat stamp, and I'm going to use a little bit of charcoal brown. Now I've chosen the charcoal brown because the charcoal brown still gives it that warmth that I'm looking for, but it has a lot of black in it too, which will match my border, my mat that I put that whitewashed piece of wood on top of. Okay, and this is going to get stamped right at the top here, like this. And then I'm going to stamp the greeting down below and leave a little bit of space in between. And again, I'm going to do this one with the charcoal brown as well. And we'll stamp that right down here at the bottom. There we go. So that leaves a little bit of room in between for an embellishment. Now, speaking of embellishments, I'm going to grab this wooden ship's wheel and this heart buckle, and I'm going to use some of that craft ink on them just to stain them a little bit. So you can kind of see the grain of the wood, and you can go in that direction. You can see how that is just, it still looks very woody, but it gives it a little bit of color. All right, so that's one. And then for this one, I'm going to kind of go this way. Do more around the edges. You can tap it in there a little bit if you want to get the center done. But I kind of like it when it's not all one color. It looks kind of worn. I'll do a little bit at the top here. Okay. So there is the heart buckle. Both of these are now stained and will match my project a little bit better. All right. Now my next step is going to be to take this piece of black onyx, and I'm going to mount these two pieces together. And you can see I've chosen to do a wider border for that layer. And there you go. So you can see that. Now, I have this twine that I'm going to use, and I want to thread this twine through this little buckle. So let me put these pieces aside here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of fold it about a little bit bigger than the front of this card. So I'm going to fold it once in half, like this, and then one more time. So I have basically 3 twine strings there. And then I'm going to cut that right there like that. And then cut that and cut that. So I have 3 strings that I cut all at one time. Now I'm going to feed these through the heart. So it's going to come through the back of the heart, all 3 of them, like that. And twine is good because it is a little bit stiff, so it does make it a little bit easier to feed through. However, if you do have trouble, like this one's giving me a little bit of trouble, you may have to kind of just do that one on its own and twist it a little bit. Make room. And if it keeps giving you trouble, then just snip it off past that spot. Now I'm going to pull it through on the other side of this slide, this buckle, but I'm not going to pull it all the way through. So I'm not putting that heart in the center of this twine. Just pull it through a little bit. And again, if you need to cut anything, you certainly can. Sometimes you can just use your scissors to poke that through, and that will work. You don't want it to get too frayed, so let me try poking that through one more time. There we go. All right, so that's one piece. And when you get the one through, just slide it up to the top and then get the next one through. These should be a little bit easier. Okay, there we go. And then straighten them out so that the 3 strings are even on both sides. Okay. Now I'll put that aside for a minute. You'll notice that there are 3 little portholes here at the bottom of this boat. Well, I've lost my little piece of mouse pad that I use, so I have a padded envelope here. I'm going to just poke holes through using the padded envelope. I'm going to add some brads in here. Give it a little bit of bling. And brads are nice because they can be feminine bling or masculine bling. All right, so I'll feed those through. And if you want, you can use a contrasting color, or you can use the black ones that come in the Stamp TV kit. I like this look because it's not so dramatic, like a bright color, but it gives it some texture and depth. All right, now I'm going to spread these out on the back. And then I'm going to add that heart embellishment after I get this placed on my card front. So you can see there are those little brads now. And then this piece is going to be adhered right to the front of this card. Now, I think what I'm going to do is, to give it a little bit more depth, I am going to use the 1/4 inch pop dots, and that will help with the lumpiness here from where those brads are. So, and you can use as many pop dots as you want. Some people like to use, 6 or 7 around the perimeter. I tend to use just the 4, and that works out okay. All right, so I'm going to give that some room there. So that's going to be up here on the top. And the reason why I'm putting it up here is because this ship's wheel is going to go down here, and I want to make sure that I have room for it on my card. But first, let's add this heart. Now, I've cut a piece of plastic tape. This is packing tape. You can use Scotch tape, whatever you have around. I only had some packing tape, so I just grabbed that. And it is pretty good. It's pretty strong. So the first thing we're going to do is add the heart. We're going to place the heart right here, and then flip this over and tape that twine down. So now we have the heart like that. Now we're going to do something similar on the other side, but instead of having it just go straight across, we're going to spread it out a little bit. So we're going to have the 3 strings spread out like that. So I'm going to flip that over, and you can kind of do that once you have it on the other side. And I'm using a much bigger piece of packing tape for this. So I'll get that one down. And then this one will go more in the middle, like that. That one down. And then this one is going to go and fan out over here, like that. And then you can straighten them out on this side once you've got them all done. Isn't that a cute little embellishment? And that will hold nice and tight because you have big pieces of tape on the back. And if you use Scotch tape, just use a little bit of extra for the wide side. Okay, so now this whole panel can go on my card base. And let me grab my score buddy and make a card base quick. Score this one at 5.5 a couple times because our cardstock is thick. And define that line with the score tool. And now this whole panel is going to go right on top of this card base. And this you can put right down onto the card front. You don't have to use pop dots for this unless you want to. All right. There we go. Now we're going to add that final little embellishment, which is the ship's wheel. And that's going to go right about there, but you can see that it's uneven. So how we're going to combat that is we're going to use a couple of 1/4 inch pop dots, and we're going to place them on the back of this wheel down here, and then we're going to put one glue dot up here. So let's flip that over in the same spot so you know where to place your pop dots, and we'll put 1/2 of a pop dot there. You have to use halves because the whole ones will show, but a 1/2 will hold pretty well. And one here, and then one more. They are sticky little buggers. Okay. And then we're going to add that glue dot right up there. And I know I got a little ink on the front of my card. So if that happens to you, what you may want to do to avoid that is color your embellishments and then let them dry overnight just so that that stain is completely dry. But we'll cover that up with this. Okay, and that's going to go right there. Press that glue dot down, and then the foam pop dots right there. And you can see the wheel goes off of this panel, but not off of the card. So there is my finished card project. Now this card isn't only for guys. Try substituting a button for the buckle and a flower for the ship's wheel, and turn this into a feminine card for any of the ladies on your card making list.